Residents do love me despite fake news not showing the good that I do in the community, because I do a ton of good. But y'all just painted me as bad news for 4 years.
That right there, folks, was the super mayor just yesterday, as ballots were being cast by the residents of Dalton. She was exuding confidence, firmly believing she would secure victory in the election. Despite all the reports from YouTubers, like me and the coverage from local news outlets exposing allegations of corruption, she remained convinced of her popularity. According to her, none of that mattered, because in her mind she was still extraordinarily well-loved by the people of Dalton. She truly believed that the election results would prove her right. As she had told various trustees, including her primary opponent, Jason House, if they wanted to challenge her, they should do it at the polls.
Stop with the disrespect. We gonna end that right now. Stop. We elected, not them. So don't bring them in our fight because you guys got to bicker with me. When y'all want to fight, I told you, you meet me at the polls. That's it.
The reason she challenges her opponents to fight her at the polls is simple. She knows that once the votes are being cast, her victory is all but certain. She sees herself as a guaranteed winner in the primary because, in her view, she is for the people.
Everything we do for the people. But we under attack. We getting scrutinized in the media. For what? Loving on the people? Showing them that they matter to us? We going through the fires for y'all. We, us, me and my minister.
Now, needless to say, despite the super mayor's strong confidence in winning the election and her belief that voters would see through what she called false allegations, things didn't exactly go as she expected.
False allegations and not fact.
In reality, not only did the super mayor lose this election, but she lost badly. Her opponent secured nearly 90% of the votes. So today we're going to break this all down and officially say goodbye to the super mayor. Now that she's out of the Thornton Township ballot and has lost this primary, she is essentially no longer a public office holder. And while that might be unfortunate for me, because you all loved the super mayor videos, it's definitely a victory for the residents of Thornton Township and the village of Dalton. This chapter in their lives is officially over. She's done, finished, kaput. Honestly, I feel happy for the villagers, though I have to admit my chances of ever buying a house have probably dropped significantly because who else am I supposed to cover now? Find me another super mayor, it's impossible. She was truly one of a kind. Meanwhile, Jason House actually seems like a stand-up guy. He looks like he's going to do a good job in Dalton, which means we'll probably have to leave this village alone now that they've handled their biggest issue. But before we dive into all the details, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who supports this channel through actualjusticewarrior.com.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Tiffany Henyard was a no-show at her election night party after only hours earlier saying she would be victorious. The winner of last night's Democratic primary is trustee Jason House.
We faced 4 years of intimidation, 4 years of failure, and tonight is the new day for the community of Dalton.
You know it's a brutal election result when you're the flashy, energetic, over-the-top candidate, yet your opponent is the one dancing his way to the podium to celebrate his victory, while you couldn't even be bothered to show up to your own election party. And let's be real, since it's the super mayor we're talking about, that election party was probably a costly affair, either for the village of Dalton or Thornton Township, because that's just what she does with tax dollars. That being said, the results were absolutely devastating. I already gave you the percentages. Jason House won nearly 90% of the vote, finishing at around 87%, while the super mayor walked away with the remaining 12%. But what's even more fascinating is how that breaks down in raw numbers. Remember, the village of Dalton has only about 20,000 residents, and just 4,400 showed up to vote. Here's the split. Out of those 4,400 votes, Jason House secured 3,896. While the super mayor, who didn't even bother to make an appearance at her election night headquarters, received just 536 votes. Yes, you heard that right. 536. And honestly, that's 535 too many, considering she was probably going to vote for herself. What makes this number even crazier is that within 2 minutes of me publishing this video, more people will have clicked on it than the total number of votes she received. And this comes after 4 years of campaigning, 4 years of spending taxpayer money on flyers and propaganda to promote herself. Yet, in the end, all of that effort only translated into 536 votes.
On the ground, we're seeing a good turnout of residents. People's voices will be heard at a higher level than it was before, and a lot of support. So we expect the victory tonight.
I think that people didn't give me a chance. I think that I was blindsided from the go. I came in 2021. And when I came in 2021, I was faced with a recall. So every year, it was something else. Then they took me off the bank account. And then the next year was something else. So you never gave me the opportunity to continue to govern, and I want the opportunity to govern my town.
Now look, if you watch the local news segments, you'll see reports that voter turnout was significantly higher this time, particularly in the village of Dalton. To put things into perspective, in the last election, the supermayor secured her victory with only about 1,000 votes. This time around, the increased engagement from voters made all the difference. If you recall, the people of Dalton were the ones who initially voted her into office. But once they saw how she governed, they launched a recall campaign, something highly unusual in the state of Illinois. That recall vote actually succeeded, meaning the residents effectively removed her from office. However, a judge ultimately invalidated the recall, allowing her to stay in power for another 2 years. This time, though, it was a straight-up primary election, and there was no judge to save her. She has been soundly defeated. After being kicked off the ballot in Thornton Township, she's now attempting a desperate write-in campaign over there. But let's be real, this loss effectively ends her political career.
Thing in hindsight that you would have done differently over these last 4 years?
Yeah, I would have told on the trustees.
For a normal person, this would undoubtedly mark the end of their political career. But Tiffany Henyard, I have a feeling she has even bigger aspirations.
What trustees and the public got was a self-proclaimed supermayor and very little or no transparency on the village's finances.
We had to go to the Illinois Attorney General's office to get you to turn over documents.
Now look, as of right now, I'm sure you all are well aware of the reasons behind this outcome. It's not just the attention she garnered as a notoriously corrupt mayor in the village of Dalton. It's not just the fact that she became a comical figure throughout her entire tenure. The reality is that this woman was completely unhinged, absolutely out of control. So let's take a moment to revisit some of her most outrageous moments, ones we haven't talked about in a while, just to remind everyone of how bad she truly was. Of course, we've covered this on the channel before. She repeatedly clashed with a former member of the Dalton Board of Trustees, and eventually, those conflicts led to serious allegations. Or, as the supermayor herself would say, allocations.
Allegations and not facts.
That's right. The supermayor was actually accused of ordering a drive-by shooting on this person's property. Yeah, you heard that correctly. And in fact, there is security footage showing a shooting taking place in and around the property of the individual she was feuding with. Just let that sink in for a moment. And remember, this isn't even the biggest scandal. This is just a minor piece of the long list of controversies that the supermayor stirred up during her time in office. Of course, we can't forget the infamous Chevy Tahoe, a vehicle that cost around $93,000, but ended up being leased at a total cost of nearly $150,000, thanks to an outrageously absurd interest rate. And who footed the bill? The taxpayers, of course. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the supermayor flat out denied any wrongdoing, even as a Board of Trustees member presented the lease agreement, complete with her signature, right in front of her during the same meeting.
That hand looked at a lease that y'all was paying $149,000 for one of them trucks. You make that's like when you 19 years old and you go get a car and the interest rate 27%. That makes absolutely no sense. You're not making great finance. Excuse me?
Please state facts.
But let me tell you, here it is, dated December 27, 2022, the cash price of a 2023 Chevy Tahoe, $93,216.71. Interest and APR, $55,929.49. Total lease price, $149,146.20. Tell me if it's not facts, because your signature is all on it.
I don't see that.
Okay, but you want me to pass?
I don't. Oh, right.
I'll
But
give
at
my
the
statement in a
at
few
the
minutes
end
when
of
you
the
finish.
day, it's not about going back and forth with you. It's about making financial decisions that is in the benefit of everybody.
And then, of course, there were the extravagant trips, the lavish travel expenses, and all the incidents that came with them. For instance, she managed to rack up nearly $70,000 in travel expenses in just a 4-month period, and that's not even the total for her entire time in office. She stayed exclusively in luxury 5-star hotels, living large on the taxpayer's dime. Oh, and let's not forget the infamous Vegas trip, where even one of her own supporters, Trustee Holmes, was involved in the chaos.